Welcome back to the podcast. Gabe Yanez and I, we are joined with soon to be 11-time CrossFit Games competitor, former Division I football player, husband, father, head coach at CompTrain, and just total badass, Cole Sager.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was telling you right before we recorded the intro, after we recorded the podcast, like, I wish that there was more of this kind of storytelling behind a lot of the athletes, especially that are competing today, because you get to know these athletes beyond, just the guy that works out a lot, and you just become so invested in wanting them to succeed. I was telling you, man, like, dude, I'm going to be watching the games and like, dude, Cole Sager or bust.
For those of you who are unfamiliar, Cole has been in the game since basically 2014. So he came right out of football, basically, headed into CrossFit, and he's been at the games every year since. And, for those who are unfamiliar with that, like, the CrossFit Games are a hard feat to get to. And he's been there every year for coming on 11 years, all the while also having two children, both of them being in the NICU. He shares some really, I think, powerful perspectives. I think he has some really good, I hate to even call them sound bites because that's not what they are. Really powerful explanations, I'd say, throughout the podcast. And I would encourage you guys to listen to the entire thing because I think he has a lot to offer.
Yeah, we started talking a little bit about training and the CrossFit Games, stuff that probably he's, talked to other people about. But I really love when the conversation gears towards just, being a dad, how that all kind of ties together, like how, like, his faith, his like consistency in the sport, the mindset that drives that. I really love how he explained, like, what he thought was the missing piece to help him execute on the floor. I thought that was super powerful. So yeah, man, I mean, these episodes always just make me so happy. So I'm sure people enjoy them.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the episode, just want a quick reminder. I know you're going to get value out of this episode. I know it. And so if you do, simple ask. If you could leave the show a rating and review, it definitely helps us out. And then if you could just share with a friend, hey, this is a cool episode with Cole. Make sure to check it out. He's coming up in the CrossFit Games like in a few days when this episode launches. And so just sharing with a friend, leaving a rating review definitely helps out the show. But without any further ado, let's dive into a great episode with Cole Sager because he has a lot to offer. Let's do it. Washington Huskies, they had a great year last year in football. Is that right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They like what a national championship?
What a year to be a dog. It was awesome. It was like I'm genuinely like not even mad about the outcome because like the year was so fun. Like it was great.
So one of my friends, his son actually plays tight end and for Washington, and he left there to now go to Stanford because he was in like the 4th spot for tight end. So I did want to ask you, because you played at Washington at a high level of football. We had Bear Hanlon on who he played Yale, right? Gabe, was it Yale? Yeah. And we were talking to him about football. So I just thought I'd just ask you a question, like, was it as cutthroat as I think it is, like in terms of your lineup? Because you played what, tailback? What did you play in college?
Yeah, as a tailback my first 3 years, moved to fullback my senior year to try to get more playing time. Most of my playing time came on all the special teams.
Oh man. So what was that experience like? I'm just curious. Cause like in high school, I also want to ask you about hurdles. I didn't realize you had done that, but going into college and like the depth chart, like, are you guys every day in the locker room? Like, what's the energy like trying to like fight for that top position? And I was just curious. I saw that on your career stats. I thought that was cool.
Every year it seemed like that energy would kind of it would change back over and restart, because like when you enter training camp, everything's up for grabs, right? Like, so before preseason, you'd go into training camp for a month where you would come on campus and it would just like you're isolated in football world before the season starts. And during that training camp period, it was like everybody's spot is up for grabs and you have to prove yourself. And so like that energy, that was really kind of cutthroat. You felt the competitive nature and energy between people in the locker room. But once the season started, you kind of got a sense of everybody like knew their pecking order, if you will. And you got that sense, and it all of a sudden became sure, we can absolutely like change the order. Like somebody might not be performing well throughout the season and somebody might step up, and like there's still some of that shifting that happens throughout the season. But you have to come together as a team, because if you don't, I mean, everybody knows like how cohesive you have to be as a team if you want to succeed. So
did you enjoy that competitive nature of like the camp portion of it? Like, is that something that you would say that like you thrived in, or yeah.
I loved camp. Like camp was the spot, man. It was like, that's where like you just fly around. Like I a couple times, like I got, especially in my freshman and sophomore year, like some of the older guys would be like, dude, you got to calm down. Like, just like settle down, stop running around. Cause I was just the guy, I ran to the coach would be over across the other field. Like I would run to him and everybody was just kind of like sauntering, and I would run over there and I'm ready, and it's like, I was that guy. So, yeah, I loved camp, and I love that. Just like, hey, this is up for grabs and I'm here to prove something. So
for sure. Well, Gabe, I had a question on how it relates to CrossFit, but did you want to talk about the football?
Well, I was just going to ask, man, like, 4 years of D1 football, 11 years qualified for the CrossFit Games. Like there's a bunch of questions that we can ask, but where I wanted to start is, what's the secret to like the longevity and staying healthy? Like, I feel like a lot of people would hear even just like the D1 football and be like, dude, that's it. Like my knees, whatever, like they're toast. And we know now, me and Jason have talked about this on the podcast too. Like it's also very different qualifying for the games now than it was obviously 5-10 years ago. And the amount of volume that you have to do, the amount of things that you have to be good at. Like I remember that it used to be that you could be either, the strong person, or you could be like the endurance guy. Like now everyone can do everything. And like, it's all in the margins, whether you even are competitive. So what would you say is the secret, man, to like this many years of really, really high, very impressive performance?
Yeah, let's jump back to just like coming out of college, because the first thing there is, I think that speaks to the methodology of CrossFit and of just functional fitness in general, using compound lifts at high intensity, caring for the body, having good mobility, all of those things. I put when I decided that I was going to start competing in CrossFit after football, I started watching videos of all the OGs and all you guys competing at the games. And the one thing that I notice is I can't move like them. I don't have the mobility to move like them. And so I put a ton of effort early on in my career in getting better mobility. And I would absolutely say that is a foundational thing that you have to have if you want longevity. You have to have good movement patterns. And I had terrible shoulder mobility. My shoulders were mangled after football. So I had to spend a lot of time in essentially just getting better shoulder mobility in so many different fronts. So I think that's one of the biggest things that has allowed for good longevity, is just good movement patterns and being consistent in that. And obviously just having the mindset of like, knowing that I wanted to do this for a long period of time. I always looked at an athletic career like the longest stint a running back could have in the NFL. And that was usually around like 32 years old is kind of like some of the longest timelines you saw for running backs before, they're like, okay, like I need to get out of here. Like I kind of saw things that way. Like there's no reason why I can't be that. And so I had that mentality and that mindset to begin with in the first place.
How old are you now, Cole?
33 now.
Oh boy. Define the odds.
That's right.
So when you say like that you spend all this time early on working on your mobility, I'm curious, what did that look like? Because I think that working on mobility is one of those things that just like is this catch-all term.
It's like, go work your mobility,
Like for some people, it's 100%. Even like buying a massage gun and just doing that at night. But is that really kind of like what'll make the difference? Like what were you doing and what would you kind of like recommend people do?
Yeah. I think one of the best terms that I've heard coined is functional range conditioning. I think it's actually like a type of practice or something like that. But that's more of the approach that I've taken was I have like a philosophical belief of training that anything worth getting, you're going to have to work for. And so all of the mobility that I do are things that require active pursuit of, that you have to get yourself into the position. You have to stress the body a certain way in order to get the adaptation that you want, to get the change in the body that you want. So it wasn't just a lot of like, oh, I'm going to like loosen up my muscle, soft tissue, and like hopefully my shoulder mobility will turn into this. It's like, no, like I got into those positions and I held those positions. Like I share this story all the time, but I used to not be able to hold a barbell just standing in a snatch position, just standing up. Like I couldn't do it. Like it was just like, I was like in this like position like this. And so I would every single day, I'd go into the gym and I'd hold the barbell for 2 minutes until eventually I got into this position and I was able to hold it. And then I started sinking lower and I'll hold it in a half squat until I could hold it all the way down into the bottom of a squat. And now at any point in time, you ask me to go hold a barbell overhead, I can go hold a barbell overhead. But it was something I had to work on. I had to stress the body in a certain way in order to say like, hey, like I'm going to demand this of you. You have to be able to do this.
Dude, that's such a great way of thinking about it, right, Gabe? It's like, creating adaptation from stressing the position instead of like, yeah, foam rolling, deep tissue, lacrosse ball, like all that's great. But you're just trying to get into better positions by maintaining those positions. I mean, holding an overhead squat with a 45-pound bar overhead is difficult as it is. And I know for me, I would avoid that in training for sure. I wouldn't work the receiving position as much because it sucks sitting down there for sure.
It does. It absolutely does. But like when I first saw a picture of myself in the overhead squat, I was like, whoa, that needs to change because that's terrible.
So we talk about, go ahead, Gabe.
Well, I was just going to say, like when it comes to mobility training, I think a lot of things, people pay lip service to a lot of these things by like doing a little bit of stretching and like a couple articles and this and that. But like what you just described, like I can't think of people that will go out and do that like on their own because it sucks. It's boring. It's like, and like most people will go, and even if their overhead squat position looks terrible or, even worse than what you described, they're still going to try and load that position. And they're still going to try and like, do the prescribed weight in a workout and just kind of like battle through versus doing the requisite work of what you described, which is, hey, no weight on the bar, literally just hold it. This week, that's all you're going to do. The next week, you're going to go 2 inches lower and then 2 inches lower. Like no one has the patience and foresight to do that. And that's, common in anything, building strength, working on nutrition. Totally. You can even start talking about, stuff like parenting and stuff. Like there's always the shortcut versus what's the saying? It's always like either the easy way to do it or the right way to do it. So anyway, we can get into all that stuff, but go ahead.
Yeah, no. And then it's super interesting because I think that so many people want to load the barbell or an implement or whatever sooner than they should.
To improve the position, actually, right? Like as a crutch.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. And I actually experienced this even in this games prep. I tweaked my neck like 4 weeks back. And this is the great thing about functional fitness and competing in CrossFit is there are so many things that you can train to continue to get the adaptations that you want, that you can, if you don't have the mobility to do a certain movement, don't train with that movement loaded. Work to get the position first. Go train all of the other things that you can do because there are so many other things that you can be doing and be getting great fitness and get prepared for life and for sport. And then once you gain that mobility and you've done the work that is required in order to get that, then you can start loading it.
I wanted to ask about your prep for the CrossFit Games. So when we're recording this, it's what are we, like 2 weeks out, give or take?
Yeah.
And I mean, look, man, you are no rookie. You have been a guy that have been in the trenches for shit. I mean, dude, this is going to be your 11th CrossFit Games, but then you also had a career in football before that and then high school. I mean, you're just a guy who likes to train hard. I mean, we definitely have that in common. And so I'm curious now going into your 11th year, and I do want to talk about comp train and how you've been able to, work with that and how that's looking. But I guess on a more personal level, how do you feel like your preparation has changed and or your mindset are like looking at it more like camp for football. Are you in camp right now, or is camp done? Like, what does it look like nowadays today to taper before the CrossFit Games? I'll start there, and then I have a bunch more questions specifically on this. But what does the taper look like, or is it non-existent? You just keep training until you hit it.
Yeah. So games training is a little. I mean, it does change, and I think that games training is a little bit of a buzzword. I think that people actually over glorify what games training actually is, when games training should be more the actual training process should be quite similar to how you would normally train. And then as you approach getting closer to the CrossFit Games, and this is my personal belief, I'm sure other people have different beliefs on how to prepare for it, then you start getting very sport specific. And so the last 2 weeks in particular, those have been the 2 weeks that have been the most sport specific. And then as I start tapering into the CrossFit Games, I have gone very sport specific. I'm going to remain a little sport specific, but then I'm going to start getting a little less sport specific as I get closer to it, to allow the body to just start to rebound, recover, give it that space to recover. It's like, I'm probably not going to see 60-minute zone 2 or zone 3 echo bike at the games, but I'm going to be doing a fair amount of that by the end of next week, because I'm allowing my body to recover, and I'm keeping certain energy systems primed and ready to compete and use those. Right. So, but when I got into games training, it looked like I went back to a typical block of strength training that you would see. I reintroduced a lot of aerobic work. I started doing, my week was very periodized and kind of undulated, so it allowed the body to recover from a hard weekend, and I'd come back down and recover from a hard weekend. Games training isn't just like, oh, throw the hammer down and just beat yourself up and stress the body and overload it so much that you can't come back from it. I've had those summers where it's like, we just overdid it. There was just like, and there was no coming back from it. And I went into the games and I was flat and I was overtrained and man, I was just beat up. And so I think there's a smarter approach to take now.
Yeah. And go ahead, Gabe.
What is sport specific training?
That's what I was going to.
Yeah. What does sport specific look like?
Yeah. Sport specific is like, what do you think you're going to see at the CrossFit Games? And let's mimic that. So like I did a mock day the other day where we went to 3 different locations and did 3 different types of workouts. We went to a track and a field. Then we went back to the gym, and then we went to an area where you did a run and a swim. And it's like the cool thing about that is you had 3 different locations. You had to gear up, take all of your stuff there, which is an unideal situation. You had to get there, get prepped, warm up, make sure that your nutrition is dialed in with all of that chaos going on to get yourself there and all the equipment onto the field. And then do that same thing for each location. Try to bring yourself down, your nervous system down between each of those training sessions. And then those actual training sessions, you're not going there and like a lot of people will go into like most training sessions in a gym. You'll go in and you'll be there for 2 hours and you'll do a strength piece. You'll do a Metcon, then you'll do some accessory work, and then, maybe some aerobic intervals. I don't know, something like that. And that could be a training session. And it all happened in the gym in a 2-hour stint. Well, this mock day or more sport specific day is you show up, you do one thing, right, and then you leave. You come down in between, you refuel, you get some food, you go back to the gym, you do one thing, so on, that kind of thing. So it's what you would see at the CrossFit Games and a kind of experience. And a good example, I think people can identify with getting sport specific for semifinals, because those workouts are announced ahead of time. So the 2-3 weeks leading into semifinals, we're just practicing the events that were announced.
Right.
You're getting very, very sport specific for semifinals.
A similar way that I would approach that is like during the open, I had an idea of what type of events were coming out. So I would train a little bit around the open, a little bit, right? You kind of had an idea. Then for regionals, you knew those events were going to be a little bit different, or in this case, semifinals, and you kind of train around that modality. And then when I thought about sports specific, which I think you added a whole nother layer to it, where you actually, use different locations and different, you touched on two things I think we should touch base on a little bit more. As I prepped for the games, I didn't do it as thoroughly as you did. Like when I thought about sports specific, I was spending time trying to acquire new skills, stand-up paddleboarding, long distance swimming, just like weird stuff, anything I could think of that I thought they would throw out at us.
Totally.
The way you described it, which I think is really powerful, is how do you like up-regulate, then down-regulate? Like how do you, and then switch locations. Now all of a sudden, like how do you keep yourself calm and collected? So my question for you on that note is, what type of prep are you doing after 11 years competing pre and post an event to set you up for success for the next event? What type of mantras, mindset, tools are you incorporating there? And then I'm sure Gabe wants to talk about nutrition.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to like upregulating and downregulating. And I think that's one of the things that's also like allowed me to continue to compete for so long is like, I have gone really deep into the process of trying to just gain more knowledge and understanding about human physiology, understanding how to train, how to care and tend to this wonderful machine that we've been given as a body. Like, how can we utilize this and make this a weapon for ourselves and optimize it, maximize its potential? And so, whether it be a breath protocol, trying to just like do like what is it called? Non-sleep deep rest kind of scenario where you're just like zoning out, just kind of like doing a body scan, which is so just like a form of meditation or something like that, where you're just laying down, close your eyes, just bring the nervous system down, regulate a little bit. And then, upregulate for your event, which doesn't take a lot. Like, honestly, when you're at the CrossFit Games, there's so many things that are buzzing around you. Like, it's not hard to get back up. Like, honestly, it's hard to get down. And that's what you want to do at the CrossFit Games. The number of times that I have been at the end of the day, not able to get to sleep because I'm just so overstimulated and trying to figure that out. That is a huge thing. I think that can really pay a lot of dividends for athletes and anybody, like honestly, anybody who's had in a stressful environment, because that's what the games are. It's just a very stressful environment. But learning how to down regulate yourself is really important.
I was going to say that, it's a lot of people, not a lot. Basically, everyone listening to this podcast isn't training or going to be competing at the CrossFit Games. But I think that but I think a really important piece is the down regulating after your workout. Like, the better you can do that and the sooner you can do that, because, it's so true that what they say, that it's not the workout that actually, insert your goal, burn fat, get stronger. Like, that doesn't happen in the exercise. It happens with the recovery afterwards. So the sooner you can get into that mode. And I think that so many people could benefit from taking the 2-3 minutes, because it's not that much time that you need to do some of those things you described, instead of running straight from, like, literally straight from the workout to work or to the kids or to the next thing you have to run to, because then you've never given your body a chance to do exactly what you described. I think that that's the real world implication to what you're talking about. Obviously for you, it's because you have to perform again. But for many of us, like, we have to perform again in different areas of life. And the more we can down regulate before we have to, get up regulated by the toddler and the baby, the better off we'll be. So
totally. Like, and just find a moment, like, it doesn't take long. Just find a moment where, like, you feel like the tension on your body, just kind of like, oh, okay. Like, and just like sit in that for a minute. Just take a minute, like 3. Tops. Like, that's all you need. And it does the mind. And that's the one that I really care most about. It does the mind a lot of good. You take care of the mind and it's going to take care of the body.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, and then I'd like to switch gears on like what Gabe was saying is, he's talking about most people listening to this podcast, basically everybody is is training so that they could show up for their family, their friends, their community.
100%.
And so, but you have the same thing as them, right? You're doing it on an extreme scale with the CrossFit Games, but you also have a family and a community and a job and whatnot. But before we get there, what does nutrition look like? Does nutrition change when you're at the CrossFit Games? And what does nutrition look like nowadays? Just for you, like in general, what does that look like?
Yeah. So I've spent the majority of my career tracking macros. I actually started tracking macros back in college when I was a sophomore in college. Went through a little bit of an intense, kind of obsessive bout with nutrition when I was in college. And so like because of that, I got familiar with tracking macros. It was a natural thing, especially back in like 2016. I think it became a pretty trendy thing to start doing. So I hopped back into that. Like, I'm familiar with that. Let's start doing it and getting a little bit more understanding. So I started tracking macros, been doing that for a long time. It has become almost second nature to me. So it's very easy for me to do that. But really the reason why I like tracking my macros and logging my food is it's just an accountability thing. It's just something to just watch. I'm a very loose tracker now. I used to be like, I was given macro numbers and I hit those numbers no matter what. And it's like, it's not the healthy approach, honestly, to be completely honest. None of us have any idea what need of macronutrients we actually have in a day. Like we just don't have the technology to be able to figure that out from a day-to-day basis, but you have a ballpark guesstimate. And so that's really the kind of the approach that I take on nutrition for, and again, this is because I am trying to take my body to the highest level of performance that I can take it. So I need it to be dialed into that sense. But really if you pull back, all I'm doing is I'm holding the body accountable to something. And so like, that's the biggest advice that I have for anybody would be like, just find something to hold you accountable. For some people that's intermittent fasting. That's just creating or time restricted feeding. That's just creating a window of time that they choose to eat in, or, don't eat after 7 PM, whatever it is. Like there's just find something in your life. But so for me, that tool has been just tracking, a loose amount. If I get to the end of the day and I'm really hungry and I've hit my numbers, which I don't actually have. I don't work with a nutrition coach anymore. And I just have a general guideline of I know that this is roughly the amount of calories that I want in a day. But if I might get to the end of the day and I'm really hungry, I'll crush a bowl of oatmeal. I'll grab Jack's Cheerios. I don't care what, I'll grab something, and I'll eat it. So that is on kind of on the regular. And it's also just a very clean eating approach on wholesome ingredients. I am very carb heavy, but that's because of the sport that I'm in, and the demands that the body has that I require of the body to be able to perform. And that will shift when I'm done competing. And, when I'll probably go to a higher fat content, probably stay pretty similar to what I do for protein, which is about 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight. So that's for me on the nutrition front. But when you come into the games prep stuff, on the mock day, I even mocked my nutrition for that, because that does change. And that's exactly like going back to that question you had, like, that changes quite a bit. And that's because you're doing so many things on the fly. You got to squeeze calories in whenever you can get them. Always have little snacks available for yourself. And then whenever you can have a meal, and this is something that like a lot of athletes don't realize, like when you can have a meal and then not eat for a period of time, it allows the body to downregulate. Because if you're constantly trying to digest food, your body is always turned on, and it's always a little bit of micro stress. And it's good for the body to just have some of that complete like rest and digest moment. So if you can get that, that's important. So practicing that is definitely worth doing leading into the games.
Yeah, so many people don't realize that that's something else that needs training too. I'm kind of diving into a little bit of marathon training now and going down that rabbit hole. And it's interesting how for something that long, like you have to refuel as you go. And where a lot of people get tripped up is not training their literal digestive system to be able to handle like a certain amount of carbs per hour. So you have to actually build that up slowly. Otherwise, if you're just like, well, I have the CrossFit Games now, and now I'm going to do all these carbs, it changes the acidity of your stomach. It puts you in a fight or flight mode. And if you haven't built up to that, you're just going to get a whole bunch of, bad news, GI distress, so on and so forth. And then if you can't keep those calories down, now you're in big, big trouble. So
they talk. I mean, it's been said so many times over the years, like, don't change on game day. Don't change something on game day. And I've actually done that a couple of years in the past where it's like, I had somebody tell me, like, oh, bro, you're not eating enough carbs. You need to carbo load harder, like leading into the games. Like, it's like, no, I didn't, but I tried to. And I was so flat and just like overdone on calories and just like, I don't want to see food. And like, I was lethargic because of it. I didn't feel sharp. And so, but again, that's just all data points. And that's one of the best things. The thing I love most when I look back at my career is like, I've had 11 of these or, 10 of these data points to be able to look back and like, well, that didn't work and that didn't work. And I'm a pretty extensive note taker. Like I have notes on most of the games that I've been in.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty fun. Like what worked and what didn't work. What was my timeline like? How many macros was I eating? Things like that. So it's really
I wish
fun
I had done that more, Cole. I wish after each event I had like taken notice and like written in a journal, like this was the event. This is how I approached it. This is the way I felt. I don't think I was looking at it like through the same lens of like longevity as what you're looking at it through.
Sure.
But I wish I had.
All right, we're taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about what we have coming up on the Train Hard app in the month of July. So we're halfway through the year, which means that all the programs on the Train Hard app are entering a new training phase for the months of July, August, and September. So if you've been waiting, if you've been thinking about joining the Train Hard app, now is a great time to do it because we're turning the page on the first half of the year and going into brand new focuses. Force is going to be focused on building some raw strength in the back squat, the deadlift, and the bench press. We're also going to be working on developing some strength in some body weight movements, the pull up, the dip. So just a lot of really great structured strength work, as well as the conditioning to make sure that you keep that engine going strong. So a lot of strength focus and force. So if you're trying to get strong this summer, absolutely something to check out. And then on the flex side, we have a brand new training phase as well. And that first 6-week cycle as part of that training phase is going to have a big focus on these giant sets. So 5 exercises per muscle group that you'll do in quick succession. So you'll do something like a bench press, then you'll do dumbbell bench press, then you'll go incline dumbbell bench press, then you'll do dips, and then you'll do push-ups back to back to back. The pump on these sessions is unreal. And I promise you, if you're trying to build muscle, if you've struggled to put on a little bit of weight, this is going to be the way to do it. This is going to be the way to improve your body composition. I'm super excited. And then the last thing is we now also have past cycles of Flex available as an ebook. So if you're just not trying to download another app, you don't want to be on a monthly subscription, you can now access Flex specifically by going on the Train Hard shop and purchasing the ebooks for either just a 6-week cycle or the full first training phase of the year. So highly recommend checking that out. Highly recommend getting on the Train Hard app. Let's get strong. Let's get big. Now let's go back to the podcast.
So speaking of which, just while we're on the subject of the CrossFit Games, I'm looking at your rankings, from 2014 till 2024. Correct me if I'm wrong. Every year you've been at the games. You were even there the year that the COVID year where they only had 5 people, right?
No, I didn't make the fifth, the top 5. I was just on the online games.
Oh, you're on the online games. Okay. So looking at it, you have some top 10s in there for sure. And how do you stay motivated and inspired to continue to go to the games? Because when you're having a 11th, the 20th, the 14th, the 13th, the 34th, how do you stay in the game? Like what keeps you in the game? You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And I love this question. Because I think it starts with you started talking about when we first got on the podcast, just about like athletics from back in high school to now. And I think one of the really cool things that set me up for athletic success, if you want to call it that, or, just a career like this, was back in high school. I had a huge letdown when it came to just my high school football experience. and having that being let down like that, and just kind of just being like, dang it, that wasn't the outcome that I wanted. Having to work through that, I think, again, it's little things that you go through in life, like it teach you how to handle it better the next time you come, have to come into something like that. But essentially back then it was like, I thought I was going to be the starting running back and tailback for our team, and I ended up being fullback. And in the offensive formation that we ran in high school, the fullback doesn't get the ball very often. But it's like, I want to go play college football. I need the rock. I need to get the yards. It's like, you got to be at least 1,000-yard rusher if you want to get any eyes on you in our state, kind of thing. Like, so it's like, how am I going to do that? Well, it's like, fine. Like, whenever the ball does come my way, let's just try to make something happen, kind of thing. And so, anyways, but having that mentality, and then getting into college and having, there are a few things there where, like, I had my senior year, like they pulled me in like partway through training camp, and like, hey, we had to give your scholarship to somebody else. And it's just like the school season, like school starts in 2 weeks. Like, I'm not prepared to pay for school. You said, you guys, like, we're going to pay for school. And it's like, you have to like figure this out. And like, it's just a huge letdown. And you're like, okay, like, that's fine. I can continue to overcome this, that sort of thing. And so anyways, having that mental approach of like, that's fine, I'm still going to continue to press on, and I'm going to press forward. Like, that's a mental shift that I think I had when I was younger, that it doesn't matter what the outcome is, what the results are, what is happening around me. I set out to do one thing, and I'm going to stay on that path until I feel like I need to pivot and I need to go down a different path. And so the results of the games, the 34th last year, I think it was 14th and 13th, when I know in my soul that I have been a podium contender every year that I've gone to the games. Like, I feel that in my soul. Like, the one thing that's bugged me the most is, honestly, like, I can put together amazing training sessions that it wouldn't, like, if you put all the training pieces together or sessions together and you saw like me redo the games events, you'd be like, oh yeah, like, he's a podium contender. But when I get to the floor, I haven't executed. And that's probably been the most frustrating thing for me, is when I have gotten to the floor, I haven't executed. And you have to execute at the CrossFit Games. That's why Matt's career has been so phenomenal. It's like, when Matt was on the floor, he executed really, really well. And it paid off, So, but anyways, the results aren't the things that I've gotten too tied up on. It's the path that I set out to why I'm doing this in the first place. And that was essentially because it's like, man, like, I want to be a positive force in a community. I want to help change somebody's lives. When I look back on my career, I want to know that I operated in a way that held the potential to shift the perspective that somebody had on their life and the trajectory of their life. That's how I want to operate in a space. And if that means just grinding through letdown of a 14th place, a 34th place, when I know that I could have performed better, like, hey, that's fine. I can carry that with grace and kindness and continue to press on, with resiliency and grit, and be just kind of stay true to that.
This might be a little bit of a tough question to answer, and I'm sure you think about this a lot. What would you say is the piece that has been missing for that execution? Now that you have all these data points, right? Like, you have 10 years, you've taken a bunch of notes. Like, what's your kind of hypothesis going into this year that, like, okay, these were the missing pieces that I'm like double down on to make sure I don't make those mistakes again, and this is going to be the year? What do you think?
Yeah. I love this question. This might be a little against the grain, but I think that the CrossFit Games was too hyped up in my mind. It was made out to be something so much bigger than it is.
Wow.
Like,
yeah.
It's, you know what I mean? And so, like, you'd get there and like every single event had all of this weight on you. And it's like, okay, like I got to put on, and I got to do this. I got to do this now. And it's like that event and this CrossFit Games has such little bearing on my life in totality that, you know what, it's fine. It's fine. Like, and I think that there's just, maybe call it the last 4 years. The last 4 years I've carried some pretty heavy weight in my life, from having children born premature, as up to 3 months. They were, my boys were born at 1 pound, 12 ounces and 1 pound, 9 ounces. Just go grab a shaker bottle and fill that with water, and then put that in your palm of your hand, and you have my children when they were born. And it's
And
like,
they were both in the NICU, Cole?
yeah, they're both in the NICU for 3 months when they were born.
So would you say that right there, in the last X amount of years, did that help shape your perspective of what you just said? Do you think if that, like, you know what I mean? Like before that, I don't know if you would have been able to say that. Do you think that those situations did it?
Oh yeah. A massive shift, right? So like every parent is going to say that something changed in them when they had their children, but I was given another gift in the intensity in which that they were brought into the world. The way that Jack was brought into the world was so emergent. Avery, our 4-month-old, it wasn't as emergent, but it was still a very intense process. And I mean, the actual like pregnancy, the actual birthing part those were, emergent and whatnot. But they were very intense. And so it's like, it gives you this perspective on things of like, this is a sporting event. This is, you know what I mean? I love it, and it can do a lot of good, and I want to care for it and tend to it because I believe it's a gift, and I've been given a gift, and I've been given a gift to use my body and its physicality to do cool things. And like, I want to honor that. Like, don't get me wrong there. Like, I'm not downplaying it from that perspective, but when you are watching your child fight for their life, it's like that changes something about you. And it just gives you a perspective on the things that really matter most in life, and like, Jason, I don't need to tell you about this, man. Like, exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. I know exactly what you're saying. Yeah, no, it's really interesting. I'd leave the hospital some days, and and one of the things that I had to do, so I'd leave the hospital some days, and there'd just be some people so pissed off. And I'd always ask myself, like, dude, if they only knew, man, if they just knew how good they have it, and just in my head. But one of the things that I've had to come to terms with over the years is that someone else's bad day is their bad day, and my bad day. So like, I'm not here to judge someone's worst situation, right? Because you've gone through stuff, Gabe's gone through stuff, I've gone through stuff, and for everybody, it's a little bit different, right? But it does help shape your perspective. And one of the things I've been trying to get better about is like, if someone's really acting a certain way and I think what they're going through is not that big of a deal, well, to them, it's a really big deal, right? It's just they don't have the same perspective that you've gone through, So, sure. But dude, I really appreciate the way you spoke about the journey. And you could tell just by the way you talk, and I know you're a man of faith, but you could tell by the way you talk, there's a bigger purpose to what you're driving towards. And, that could be seen in the longevity. I mean, I'm looking at this, 10 years in a row, man. It's just, man.
Thank you.
I love this episode, dude.
Thank you. I appreciate this, man. Thank you.
Well, Cole, it's also something that I've heard you talk about, and faith specifically being an advantage when competing.
Yeah, 100%.
Say more.
Dude,
how does that?
Like, it's grounding, right? It's like I'm not caught up in the results. I'm not caught up in frivolous parts of it. It's like, man, like, so Jason, like you were just saying, like, this might be somebody else's hard, like their hard day is their hard day. I believe that I was given the life and guided through what I have been guided through so that I can help somebody. And so like, I have this, and because my hard might seem to me like it was harder, like, and I have navigated that, well, then it's my responsibility to, if I see somebody that's like, hey, like, that's not like, for me, that wouldn't be a very hard thing to get through. Then I see that as a responsibility. Like, can I help? Can I assist? Can I help make somebody else's life a little bit better, a little bit different? Like, just maybe even help try to give some perspective and take on that responsibility. And so, like, so much of competing for me is trying to find more depth to myself. What else can I pull out of my heart, my soul, and make me a better man, build better character? What else can I learn? Because like going through sports is kind of like going through life and fast forward. Like you go through a season, like you're forced to learn things about yourself and about your character, and things get exposed. Things get exposed about your character very easily. You be on the competition floor, like start watching athletes and start questioning like what's their character like, and then watch them on the competition floor when something negative happens. And it'll come out and you'll see that. And you got to ask yourself like, ooh, like I didn't know that was in me. I got to figure it out. This is one of my favorite things about being a dad is I started to feel like I was able to handle the competition floor really well. And this is where like the competition floor like aligns with life. I could handle the negative things that I didn't expect on the competition floor. And I started to be able to handle that really well. But then I would get to 3 a.m. trying to feed my kid who isn't feeding well and is crying, and I want my wife to be able to sleep, and that's starting to bug me, and I have a negative visceral response. And it's like, oh, like there's still something that I need to root out of my heart and figure out, because like I could handle that on the floor totally fine, but when I'm in private at 3 a.m., I'm an uglier version of myself. And it's like, I want to change that. And I need to change that, So, but going back to the faith side of it is like, that is a grounding thing for me. It is a standard that I hold myself to, that I believe that's the standard that I should be trying to live by, of kindness, of grace, of love, of toughness, mental toughness, to be able to endure things. To when people talk about wanting to be like, oh, I want to serve, I want to help, until they're treated like a servant. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to serve, but then you're like, when you're treated poorly, you're like, ooh, like, no, I don't want that. But it's like, no, like I want to be able to take that on too, So, the faith side of it is like, I know what I am searching for. So when I get on the floor, it's like, I can handle this. I can take this, and, we can get super deep into the theology of it, on the doctrine of that. But, it's like, I believe on my faith that somebody else has taken that burden on the cross for me, and so on and so forth. So it's like, I can endure this today. This I can endure.
Man, go ahead, Jay.
I want to ask you on that note. So people ask me all the time about my CrossFit Games experience and, whatnot. And one of the things I try and express to them is that I made some good money. I won some awards. But the best gift it gave me was exactly what you're talking about. You're doing probably a more elegant way of describing it than I normally do, but basically talking about how it helps support your mindset, right? How it allows you to learn how to understand what's in your control, overcome adversity. And I think you described it really well. Like sports basically fast forward your character development. It is essentially, and Gabe's getting ready for a marathon. We're both doing a high rocks together. That's like a little bit of a different level, right? But you still learn about yourself in that process, right? But I'm curious, like when you talk about mindset perspective, it's helped me understand what's in my control. But when you're relating to this 3 a.m., baby's awake, you're like kind of getting a little bit frustrated. What are you doing then to transfer the skills you're developing on the floor to real life? And are there any tools in particular you've been working on that fitness has contributed in your life? Because I believe fitness is one of the greatest tools we could use to learn the skills to help us in real life. But what in particular are you using from a mindset perspective to translate to that 3 a.m. session?
I think one of the biggest things is just being aware of it, is like being willing to call yourself out, like, because on the competition floor, you're in the moment, and you have to be able to see that, how you're responding is negative, and you have to change it, or else the event is just going to continue to go downhill. So you have to be able to like almost get outside of yourself and see what is going on and be willing to address it. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing with character development is acknowledging that something needs to change, and that you want to change something. I think that's one of the best things about event debriefs. If you can do an event debrief with a coach, it's like, oftentimes you get the feedback from the coach of like, well, that didn't go very well. And let's say that an athlete is on the floor and they have a very negative response to a judge no repping them, or they had a poor event and they threw their belt on the floor and just had this terrible response to the event. Usually when they come off the floor, they kind of have their tail tucked between their legs because they know that they didn't respond in a good way. Like, and that's one of the things is like, when you did not do something the correct way, the right way, that the standard that has been set. And there's, I think, a kind of a universal standard. And then I think that then there's even higher standards that people put upon themselves, which I think is awesome and noble and a beautiful thing. But it's like those athletes come off the floor and it's like, they walk up to their coach and they don't want to look their coach in the eye. It's because like they know they didn't handle something well. You got to be willing to hold yourself to that same accountability at 3 a.m. in the middle of the night, and not just say like, oh, like I'm glad nobody saw that. No, somebody did see that. You saw that. Like, you watched yourself do that. Change it. Fix it. Don't be okay with it, because that's not. Now, obviously, have some grace and understand that like, hey, you're an imperfect person, and it's going to take practice of figuring that out. It's not just going to happen like that. But I think just having that willingness to hold yourself accountable there is extremely important, because
And I think that that's another like beautiful thing about having kids, because there's going to be a lot less time when no one's looking, right? Like, they see everything. And I think that that's, there's so much, they hold you accountable, not in a way where they're going to be like, hey dad, why are you acting that way? But like, you're modeling how they're going to grow up to be men, to eventually be parents, to be all of these things. 100%. So every little thing you do, every reaction you have, every time you lose your cool or just aren't the best version of yourself, like those things are 100% being imprinted. Doesn't mean that you mess up once and that's it, it's all ruined, but these things do matter. And I think that that's the beauty of becoming a dad, is that now you, more times than not, because how much, really alone time do you get nowadays? Right. You do have someone that's there and that is going to watch 100%. And you're going to impact. So,
and to Jason's point, you asked a question of like, what is a practical tool that people can utilize to help kind of shape these things? And journaling has been that for me over the years. Like I told you, like I take a lot of notes on all my game stuff. Well, I take a lot of notes on my life too. Where Genesee and I actually recently started, she's been doing it for a year. I started it this year. So she's a year ahead of me, but we have a 1 line a day journal where it's just a little snippet and it goes through the calendar year on the top line, and there's 5 lines. So the next year we'll do line 2 and then line 3. And then, so every day you write just a few sentences about what that day was like. And you can go back 5 years later and each day be able to read what those 5 years looked like. But I'll write notes on what the day was like. And I oftentimes included like, I didn't have my best response today when Jack did this, but he said something really kind to me that lifted my spirits. Like something like that, or, I have a personal journal that I'll journal in a good amount, but I'll call those things out. And so, cause I think it's very valuable to be able to see in writing, like see your thoughts, one, get down on paper. And then 2, especially if like recalling some of your actions, like, ooh, like I want to fix that. Like that's something that I want to fix, and I'm going to call it out and bring that forth. Cause if I just keep it hidden in the back of my mind, it's never going to change. So I'm going to call it forward. I'm going to put it out in front of me, like, cause I'm going to change that.
And it also, I think, gives you gratitude, Cole, in some way, because everybody's going to go through tough times in life. And, just like speaking from my experience, a couple of months ago was like really, really tough in our house, and we're going through some more stuff. And there's going to be ups and downs of in the house, right? And we were a little bit up, now we're a little bit down, we're a little bit up, we're a little bit down, and everybody's going to go through it. But I think what's helpful is like, if, for example, if I read through a journal from, a year ago, and maybe we were going through something, and then I look back on those like a year later, it could maybe give me a lot of gratitude, because maybe at that point I journaled about maybe a really difficult time, and those times do go in ebbs and flows, and hopefully you're in a better position now. And just expressing that gratitude, I think, is important, right? And I think it gives you good perspective for the day,
Yeah, totally.
I appreciate you bringing that up. I wanted to ask, because you have something, Gabe, I wanted to ask about CompTrain. Yeah.
Before we get to that, so I think that putting that stuff down on paper is also a really, really good reminder of like this too shall pass, both for the good times and the tough times. Because if you can go back and look at, hey, that wasn't the best day, but then you can see that the day after you were like, hey, like it was great or whatever. It's just a good reminder that like, whether it is the tough times or the good times, because me and Jason have talked about this too, that this too shall pass, I think is used a lot for the tough times, but I think it's a good reminder too of like the amazing experiences that you can have with like your 2-year-old. Like he's not going to be 2 forever. And you need to appreciate those like really fun toddler 100%. Times, because there's going to be a point where like those aren't a thing, I think about that on my career, my CrossFit career all the time. That's right.
This too shall pass, because this is going to pass, guys. Like it's going to be here today and gone tomorrow. And it's going to feel like I blinked and it was just, whoa, where did that go? And so, 100%, I'm with you there. That's really, really good. Even the good stuff will pass.
For sure, man. And then the last thing I wanted to ask before we kind of pivot a little bit is, dude, going through your Instagram, I loved seeing the appreciation that you have for your wife, Genesee, like a couple of the posts, and just kind of wanted to ask you, the one specifically about her taking over all the night feedings now so that you can like sleep and recover and train for the games, and kind of tying it back to what you were saying before of like, now, you can go out there and you're not like, there isn't this weight to the end result, but then how do you balance the fact that like, obviously you have all this appreciation for like what is a really, like, I know how much of a sacrifice it is to like take that bulk of work and do it. And it's so incredible to have a partner that's that supportive. I know that me and Jason talk about it all the time. Like we have incredible wives, and I love Ariel to death. And it sounds like you obviously do as well. But then how do you balance potentially the pressure of like, this isn't just you putting in the work to get to the games and perform. Like this is a family, coach, training partners, but more specifically, like, what she's doing to support you. How do you balance also being okay with, whatever the result is, the result, because there's other people involved in getting you there?
Totally. That's such a wonderful, question. I think one of the best things that Genesee has done for me is she said, I'm going to do this. And the thing that I want most from you is for you to enjoy competing. Just go enjoy it. That's all I want from you, is just to go enjoy the process, not just have fun. Like, cause having fun is really, there's so many ways to go have fun. So like, honestly, the CrossFit Games is not the place to go have fun if you're looking for fun.
There's a lot of other ways.
Yes, there's a lot of other ways.
Less painful ways. Yeah.
But to go enjoy it, to feel like I can put my best foot forward, and she's going to be so content. Now let's go back to what we talked about earlier. In people put false weight and burden onto circumstances all of the time. And I feel like it would be an unjust thing to put more weight on the CrossFit Games for Genesee's sake, because she took night feeds, because she did this. She chose to make that sacrifice out of the goodness of her heart because of love. And for me to create a false sense of weight and burden is not why she did that. And I am actually not doing her service and sacrifice just enough, or treating it in a just way. I need to honor that better by just going and putting my best foot forward, trying to execute, enjoy the process, like, and smile about it, because ultimately, like, isn't that what we want from our spouses? Just happy, like for them to just, I want to see them smile. I want to see her at peace. Like, all the hard times, times are not going to be easy all of the time, but I want to see her soul at peace, even through the hard things, even through the bad days. Like, your soul can still be at peace, even if you're going through a challenging season, like that sort of thing. And so I think that it just approaching the games at peace and enjoying it, I think is really the approach.
Man, that was a really different way that I thought you were going to go on that, Cole. I don't know about for you, Gabe, but like every year before the CrossFit Games, we would have a conversation in our house, because I recognized it was a team. It was Ashley and I were making sacrifices, right? It wasn't just me. It was us. Yeah. But the way that you just spun that, which I think is really, really helpful, even to think about that from like an entrepreneurial perspective, is that if she wants you to enjoy, if she wants you to do these things, you can't take that burden on further, because then it even makes it a bigger deal, right? It needs to be like, that's different than the way I would originally think about that, right? The way I would think about it is, okay, she committed to this. I want to do this now to make sure that, she doesn't think this was a waste or whatever. But I get what you're saying. Like, she wants me to be happy. She wants me to enjoy. If this is something that's going to bring me joy and fulfillment, then then let her do her thing and I'm gonna do my thing. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I loved reading those two posts, that one and the one about you running with her and how she's been such a good training partner for those middle distances. Like, I'm super fortunate too. And I know that there's a lot of guys out there that maybe don't have the opportunity to do this. And I know how lucky I am that, like, we both enjoy fitness so much that we do it together. Right. And it's the thing that we get to go out and, like Jason mentioned that signed up for High Rock, signed up for the Houston Marathon next year. So did Ariel, she's doing the half marathon version of Houston, and she's going to be doing High Rocks. And it's so cool that, like, so fortunate. And I give her many shout outs in this podcast, but another one just because it's not like, oh, I'm going to do this. And she's like, okay, go do it. And we're kind of like, doing our own things. She wants to participate in it. And I think that that's super cool. So I love that you guys run together. And
I was going to actually, I have a post that I thought up recently that I'm probably going to talk about, but it's Genesee essentially calling me to the carpet on my running of, like, she's like, I don't think you're pushing yourself. College? No, she was a softball player. She played Division I softball, and just, athlete, right? Like, just finding outlets, and her outlet ended up becoming running. And I'm excited to see what her running career, now that we're done having kids, like really where that could take off too, because she's really, really enjoying it. And anyway, she called me to the carpet and she was like, I think you need to run harder. I think you need to run more. I don't think you're a good enough runner for what you have the potential. And it's like, she's just so invested into me. And it's like, you just got to sit back and you got to, like Jason used the word earlier, you just got to be grateful. Just got to sit in gratitude.
Wait, so she like pulled you, so you guys were done running and she's like, no, hey Cole, like, can we sit down and have a chat? So
we were in the middle of a run.
Like, you're a good dad. Bro, you gotta step your game up on the track.
Yeah. She was like, I am outrunning you. You need to fix this. I'm like, yes, ma'am. Okay. Like,
I love that.
Got you.
Oh man, I wish I was there for a video of that. Like, I can just see, good. I have like a visualization of what it was like. It's kind of like you're on the track, you stop for a second, a serious pause. It's like, bro, you got to run faster. Yeah.
It's like, she delivers things cold like that too. It's great. Like, I love it.
So recently, not that recently, what was it, how long ago did you step in and support for CompTrain? I know you had been with the organization for a long time, but you took over as like CEO, like, what was it, about a year ago?
As head coach. Yeah. So Ben's the CEO. Yeah. And it was last April. So it was a year and a couple months. Is when that was announced. And the announcement was Ben's retiring from coaching athletes. Like, he was done coaching athletes competitively, done coaching athletes just at large. And he wanted to focus on being CEO of CompTrain in the company. And he had asked me, like, hey, do you want to come on? Would you come on and take on and lead the coaching of athletes, just the athletic side of the brand. And so that was last year, something that an endeavor that I went down.
And so on that note, you're, I think, uniquely qualified to answer this. You've been in the game a long time. You're also working currently with athletes. Where do you see the sport of CrossFit going? Because in my opinion, you got into it, like, honestly, like at the height. I think you got into it at the peak. Because I was kind of coming out and you were kind of coming in, and it just like, right. I think there was like a peak. What's the plan for it? What do you see happening in the future?
Yeah, I've actually been pondering this a lot, and I think that the games has a lot of potential to continue to climb. I just don't think that it's going to have the buzz that it once had back in like that 2015, 2016. It was new and it was shiny, so it gained a lot of traction. I think that the growth of it is going to need to be a steady, consistent growth, and a commitment of the community to say like, hey, like this is what we believe in, and this is what we enjoy doing, and letting more of the organic growth that can occur start to come. And I think that'll be more of a steady step forward. As far as what CrossFit HQ needs to do to make that happen, I really just don't think that I can speak to, because there's just so many things that I don't know where their heads are at. I don't know what they're wanting to do, and how they want to manage the affiliate process and support systems. And I feel like I've seen a lot of things. I actually recently kind of helped open an affiliate here in town. And so I'm getting a lot of the affiliate emails and things like that. And it feels like they're doing a lot more than they ever have.
That's for sure.
Yeah. So I think with that kind of support, you're going to see more growth, just because the affiliates are going to feel supported, and those owners are going to start talking about things more, and the passion is going to be reinvigorated. And if those passions are reinvigorated, then that's going to trickle down into their communities, and their communities are going to spread it. And like, that's that organic growth that I'm talking about. And I would love to see that. And I hope to see that. As far as the sport becoming more professionalized, I don't know. I don't know what they could do to make that happen. I would love to see it. I would love to see it more professionalized, so more people could make a living being an athlete. Because right now, most people, including myself, their livelihood isn't from competing anymore. It's actually from being influencers. And so,
okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
And so like, at least at this point in my career, the bulk of my earnings comes from social media sponsors, and whatnot. And then the winning side of it, like, it's just not as much, because the sport hasn't grown as much as it could have.
Yep. That makes sense. And I guess my final question on that particular piece is, do you think that it would benefit CrossFit? I have a hypothesis that they should narrow down the amount of events that are at the games, and pick from, like, let's just say 50 events and repeat events on an annual basis, so that spectators can kind of have a better idea of what's going on. Like, hey, we're going to do these 10 events, plus maybe we'll sprinkle a few of these in, so that if you're a spectator, it's not like reinventing the rules every time. Do you think that'd be a good thing, or do you think it's not in line with
okay. I'm glad you brought this up, because I do have a lot of opinions. I just don't know like what to speak to, but I actually I recently told Genesee this. I was like, I think that like if they made something that was more repeatable, that you could expect year over year and watch the growth of, that people could get behind, that could do something really, really good for the community. I think that early on, that was one of the things that was so cool about the sport, was that the community felt like they could kind of mimic what games athletes did. Because honestly, back in 2014, our workouts weren't that much crazier than what you might see in an affiliate, but they've gotten a little bit out of the ballpark, if you will. Like, they've gotten a little bit crazier, a little bit more intense. And that's just because the field has gotten that much more fit and strong and powerful. And so I think it's harder for the general community to comprehend what we're doing on the floor and then take that into the gym and recreate it. Like we now feel like we're like a completely different thing when we're not. We're still just an extension of the community. We're just varying at a different degree. And I think that if we brought that back down on a games level so that people could relate to it more, I think that would create a lot of buzz and be easier to follow. And then there's a whole other series of thoughts on touring systems and different things like that I would really want to see. Like, I love the idea of a touring system. One thing that I've always hated throughout the career is not feeling like we're being tested who the fittest on earth is more like often enough. It's like you get one weekend who prepared the best, peaked the best, and is the fittest at that one moment, that snapshot. But if you had a touring system with an eloquent point system that could show who has been the fittest throughout the year, the whole year, I think would be really fun. And, obviously climax at the CrossFit Games and points would be way higher at that, and you would earn way more points. But there's systems like that other sports that do things like that, and I think they could be really fun, and it'd be I think a fun thing to follow.
Well, my final thing that I have a question on, and Gabe, I don't know, before I ask it, do you have anything that you wanted to ask on this?
No, man, this has been awesome.
I think that you're going to be in a unique position to answer this. You've been in the game a long time. You've been around all kinds of athletes and coaches and competed. Mm-hmm. What have you changed your mind on when it comes to training or just in general? With having kids, with being married as long as you have? Like, what's something that like you thought about maybe a while ago and now it's like really changed? And one thing that I'm picking up on, obviously, is your perspective on the games. Once going through what you went through with your kids, your kind of your perspective shifted. But like, what's something else? What's something that you've changed your mind on?
Yeah. And maybe this sparks another question, but I think people train too much.
Whew. Matt Chance had the same thing, right, Gabe?
Yeah. I mean, it's like people train way, like they're doing more than they need to. I have really started to lean into what are the minimum necessary requirements in order to change the body, to get the adaptation that I'm looking for. Do that, get out of the gym, go be with your kids, go be with your family, go build something else. Like let the body rest and recover. But instead you see people doing a bunch of junk reps, a bunch of junk volume, and it's like the junk miles. Like, I mean, you're probably familiar with that, Gabe, right now with marathon training. Like, there's no need for the extra miles to just like beat the body up. You just see a lot of that. It's just a bunch of junk training. That's like, get out of the gym, go enjoy life,
Yeah, too much volume and not enough intentionality behind what you are doing and the time you are spending.
Intentionality. It's exactly it. It's like, be very, very intentional about what you're trying to change and what you're trying to get. Do that. And then in the right time, yes, like there is a need for, like for me, like I need to adapt to the fact that I'm going to be asked to do somewhere between 12 and 16 events over a 4-day period. And so I have been slowly progressing the body to do that. But I didn't jump into games training and start doing 4 events a day and 6-hour training blocks. It started with, I went into the gym for an hour, and then I went into the gym for another hour later in the day. And then the next day I did something similar. And then those sessions over the last 6 weeks have gotten a little bit bigger and a little bit more intense because of the sport specificity that I have. But it's like, I didn't just jump into this. It's like I was very intentional about the process of progressing myself through that. And so anyways, I think on the regular though, like I have trained a lot less time in the gym, and I've just been far more intentional with it. And I think that comes with time in the sport, understanding it better, and gaining knowledge, as much knowledge as I possibly can about what the body needs in order to change.
And having kids, I'm sure that played into that too, like you have kids and your time automatically shrinks significantly. It's funny, on the Dave Castro interviews, I heard Ariel Lowen say something very similar. And obviously, she's well known because she's a mom, very fit mom. And she was like the same thing. She was like, I literally don't even go train at an affiliate. I train everything in my garage because like I know that there's a certain amount of work I need to do. I'm gonna go in, do it, and then I got to get out. So I think that, having kids definitely plays into that.
Yeah. It's been fun. It's been fun training with James this last summer. James Sprague lives here in town now. So we've gotten to train together a lot, and different seasons of life, right? Like he's 22 years old. I'm 33 with 2 kids. All he has to focus on right now is competing in CrossFit. I got to live that life for a period of time. It's amazing. And I hope that he's enjoying it. And I think he's doing a great job there, but it's funny because we'll be in the gym and there'll be like a lot of banter and a lot of talk. And it's like, all right, guys, I gotta go. Like I got kids, I got feeds. My wife is,
People when back at NorCal CrossFit days, like I remember like specifically, it would be, we called it the gotta go plan. Cause I would walk in there and be like, guys, I gotta go. Like we gotta go. Like we're starting when this clock starts, like we're going and or when that clock hits 10, like just get ready. Because otherwise you're going to sit there for a long period of time. And so I think you bring up a really good point, like maybe a little bit less volume, but more importantly than that, it's about intentional reps, focus time, and get out and go do other stuff. Cole, I really appreciate you being on the show. For people who want to, follow your journey at the games, post games, is the best place on Instagram? Is that we'll link in the podcast show notes? Yeah.
Best place is Instagram to follow along. Cole Sager 35 on Instagram. I don't post a ton on YouTube right now, but I still have a YouTube channel up, YouTube/Cole Sager. But yeah, I think Instagram is the best way to follow me.
Well, make sure to go check him out. For what it's worth, I was commentating last year at the CrossFit Games for ESPN, and partly because like I just know you well, and I've known you for years. I was on. Oh, Cole Sager's gonna crush this one. Cole Sager's gonna crush this one, and it just adds validity to what you're talking about. Yeah. Where I do believe that you are a podium contender, and I'm confident that that I don't think you're mistaken in what you're talking about. I believe you have the capability to do so. And I hope nothing more less than you to be able to go out there and go perform to those expectations coming up in a couple of weeks, man.
Thanks.
Yeah. And this episode's going to be coming out on Monday, August 5th. So like,
cool.
Perfect timing. I'm sure that a lot of people listening to this are ready to watch you crush it on the floor, man. Wishing you the best.
Fantastic. Thank you, brother.
And we'll have to do a recap once the dust settles on how it goes.
Anytime you guys want to get on, this was an absolute blast and a pleasure and a treat for me to be able to talk with you guys. And I feel honored. So thank you so much, guys. Appreciate your guys' time.
Yeah, well, as per usual, just want to remind everybody, make sure you're getting after it, training hard in the gym, but getting outside the gym, like Cole reminded us, make sure to go check him out at the CrossFit Games, and hoping your family is doing well. And we'll see you guys again next week for another great episode.